Emily wakes up with a strange mark on her skin, unknowingly bound to an ancient prophecy that could either save or destroy the world. As she unravels secrets, battles dark forces, and faces an impossible choice, her courage will be tested like never before. Can she unlock the power within and fulfill her destiny before it's too late? The journey to change the world starts now. Emily stirred slowly, the first rays of the morning sun peeking through the blinds of her bedroom. The warmth of the light felt comforting, and for a moment, she lingered in the quiet cocoon of her bed, enjoying the peace before the world outside demanded her attention. But as she sat up, a strange sensation washed over her. Her skin prickled with a faint, unfamiliar tingling, and she instinctively reached for her arm. What she found startled her. There, on the inside of her left forearm, was a mark, glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. It wasn't the usual bruise or scar she'd expect after a restless night, but something entirely different. The symbol looked ancient, intricate, and alive. It shimmered softly, as if pulsing with its own energy. It was like nothing she had ever seen before. It wasn't the sort of thing that could be easily explained away as a random bruise or skin irritation. This was purposeful. Emily rubbed her eyes, trying to focus. Maybe she was still dreaming. Maybe this was just a trick of the morning light. She glanced around the room, half expecting to find some explanation. A broken lamp, a misplaced object, anything that could give her a rational reason for the strange mark. But there was nothing. Her room was as it always had been. The same books on the shelves, the same soft blue comforter she had slept under for years. Yet, that mark remained, vibrant and alive against her skin. Confusion welled up in her chest. How had this happened? Could it have been some sort of skin reaction? Perhaps it was a rash or irritation from something she had touched, but the mark was too distinct, too deliberate to be a coincidence. She stood and approached the mirror, trying to inspect the mark more closely, but it was difficult to make out the full design from her own vantage. The edges of the symbol seemed to shift slightly, as if refusing to be fully understood at a glance. Emily felt a creeping unease growing in her stomach. Was this real? Was she imagining it? A feeling of dread washed over her, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. What was more unsettling than the mark itself was the strange, almost magnetic pull it had on her. Something inside her whispered that this was no accident. This was meant to be. But meant for what? And why her? Suddenly, she heard a knock on her door, pulling her out of her thoughts. Her best friend, Jenna, called through the door. "Emily, you up yet?" Emily jumped, startled by the sound, and quickly pulled her sleeve down to hide the mark. Yeah, just getting up," she replied, trying to sound normal. But her voice didn't match the sense of panic that was rising in her chest. "I'll be out in a minute." Once the footsteps faded down the hallway, Emily quickly grabbed her phone and began searching online. She typed in strange glowing mark on skin, scrolling through the endless articles and images that failed to answer her question. Nothing seemed even remotely close to what she was experiencing. She tried ancient symbols next, but that led to more confusion. There were too many different meanings for too many different cultures. None of it made sense. She sighed in frustration, glancing back down at the mark again. It was still there, and it seemed to have grown more vibrant. As her mind raced with possibilities, one thing became clear. Her life was about to change in a way she couldn't begin to understand. The day unfolded in a haze, the mark on Emily's arm heavy in her mind, even though she tried her best to ignore it. She met up with Jenna for coffee, hoping the distraction would help take her mind off the strange symbol and its inexplicable presence on her skin. They talked about their usual topics: work, friends, movies, but nothing seemed quite the same. The world around her was different. It was brighter, sharper, more alive. When Jenna laughed at a joke Emily had told, the sound of her laughter was unusually clear, as if every syllable was heightened, amplified in a way that Emily had never noticed before. The colors around her, the brown of the coffee cups, the green of the plants on the windowsill, everything felt more vibrant. It was as though the world had been turned up to full brightness, and she was seeing it for the first time. Emily shook her head, telling herself she must be overtired or overreacting to the mark. But the sensations didn't go away. As she watched Jenna talk, she noticed something else. She could see the faintest traces of emotion on her friend's face, even the small, fleeting expressions that people usually try to hide. Jenna's smile held more meaning than it ever had before, and Emily could sense a sadness behind her eyes that she had never picked up on. It wasn't just Jenna. As they continued their walk through the park after coffee, Emily realized that she was perceiving everything around her differently. She could hear the soft rustling of the leaves in the trees, the murmur of distant voices, the hum of the city beyond. The air felt fresher, more alive with possibility. As she walked past people on the street, she could almost feel their emotions as if they were being broadcast directly into her mind. She could tell who was happy, who was worried, who was stressed. She couldn't explain how she knew, but the clarity was undeniable. She stopped for a moment, overwhelmed by the rush of new information flooding her senses. The feeling was strange and unsettling. Emily had never experienced anything like it. It was as if she had gained access to an entirely new layer of reality, one that she had never noticed before and now couldn't seem to ignore. "What's wrong?" Jenna asked, noticing her pause. Emily blinked, trying to regain her composure. I don't know," she admitted, her voice betraying the confusion that was clouding her thoughts. "It's like everything is clearer now. More intense, somehow." Jenna gave her a concerned look, but Emily wasn't sure how to explain. She didn't want to tell her about the mark, not yet. She wasn't ready to voice the strange feeling that had settled in her chest. Instead, she forced a smile and shrugged. "I guess I'm just having an off day," she said, trying to sound casual. But inside, she was reeling. Something had changed, and she wasn't sure whether it was the mark or something else entirely, but she knew one thing for certain. Her world had shifted in a way she couldn't fully comprehend. She just had no idea how far that shift would take her. That night, Emily lay in bed, tossing and turning as her thoughts raced. The mark on her arm was still there, its faint glow now dimming as the night deepened. But the sense of unease in her chest refused to fade. What was it? How had it appeared overnight? And why did it feel so significant? She tried to push the thoughts away, focusing on the soft hum of her fan, hoping it would lull her into sleep. But sleep came with a vengeance. Emily drifted into a deep, dream-filled slumber, and this time, the dreams were nothing like the peaceful ones she was used to. She found herself standing in a vast, ancient desert, the air dry and heavy with the weight of time. The sky above was dark and swirling with strange, otherworldly clouds that seemed to move in patterns she couldn't understand. In the distance, she could see the ruins of a grand, forgotten civilization, long since abandoned. As she walked toward the ruins, a faint glow pulsed from beneath the sand, just out of reach. She reached down instinctively, her fingers brushing the cool surface of a buried stone. The moment her skin touched it, a burst of light engulfed her, and she was transported to another place. A place that seemed like a memory, though one she could never have experienced. A figure appeared before her, tall and cloaked in shadows, with eyes that glowed like embers. The figure spoke, its voice low and distant, yet undeniably familiar. "You are the one," the figure said, its voice resonating within Emily's mind. "The mark you bear is the key. You must unlock its power before it is too late. The balance of the world depends on it." Emily tried to speak, but no words came out. The figure stepped closer, its presence both comforting and terrifying at the same time. "The prophecy is written," it continued, "and you are the chosen. But you are not alone. Others will seek to destroy you, to claim the mark for themselves. You must be ready." Before Emily could respond, the figure vanished, and she was left standing alone in the swirling sands. The desert seemed endless, stretching into infinity, and the pulse of the mark on her arm grew stronger, urging her to follow. But she couldn't move. A sharp pain shot through her chest as she awoke with a start, gasping for air. Sweat clung to her skin, and her heart raced as she sat up in bed, still feeling the residual weight of the dream pressing down on her. The room was dark, the only light coming from the soft glow of the mark on her arm. It had returned. The same glow, the same strange energy, now flickering in the silence of the night. What did it all mean? Who was the figure? And why had she dreamed of such a place, one that felt like it belonged to a distant past? The questions swirled in her mind, unanswered and growing more urgent with each passing moment. Emily knew that the dream was no coincidence. It was a warning, a call to action. But what exactly was she supposed to do with this knowledge? She had no answers, only a deep, unsettling feeling that the mark on her arm was the key to something far greater than she could understand. The night felt heavy, and sleep would not come again. She couldn't shake the feeling that the dreams were just the beginning. The next morning, Emily tried to shake off the remnants of her disturbing dream, but the unease lingered like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. She couldn't ignore the mark any longer, nor could she continue pretending that everything was normal. It was time to find out what was happening to her. With determination, she began her investigation. The first step was simple: research. Emily spent hours combing through the internet, searching for any mention of glowing marks or ancient symbols. She scrolled through countless pages, from conspiracy theories to spiritual forums, but nothing seemed to match what she was experiencing. Most of the symbols she found were either too modern or too abstract. Nothing resonated with the mark on her arm. Frustrated, Emily turned to books. Her local library had always been her sanctuary, and she knew it might hold the answers she needed. As she walked between the towering shelves of old volumes, she felt a strange sense of purpose, as if the very act of searching was somehow connecting her to something beyond herself. Hours passed, and Emily grew increasingly desperate. She was about to give up when a dusty, leather-bound manuscript caught her eye. It was tucked in the back of a shelf labeled Ancient Civilizations, its cover worn and faded. The title read, Symbols of the Lost Ages. Intrigued, Emily pulled it from the shelf and began flipping through the pages. The manuscript was filled with detailed drawings of various ancient symbols, each one more complex than the last. As she examined the pages, her fingers brushed over one symbol in particular, and a strange sensation ran through her body. The mark on her arm pulsed in response. She quickly turned back to the symbol and stared at it. There, in the middle of the page, was a symbol identical to the one on her arm, only much older, etched in the brittle pages of the manuscript. The description below the symbol read, "This mark, known to the ancient ones as the Seal of the Chosen, was believed to grant its bearer great power, but at a terrible cost. Only the one who bears the seal will know its true purpose. It is said that when the seal awakens, the world will change." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe what she was reading. This was it. This was the symbol she had seen on her arm. She turned the page, desperate for more information. The manuscript described how the seal was tied to an ancient prophecy, a prophecy that foretold a time when a chosen individual would awaken the seal and wield its power, altering the fate of the world. Her mind raced as the weight of what she was reading sank in. This wasn't just some random mark. It was part of something much bigger, a destiny she hadn't asked for but was clearly meant to fulfill. But the question remained, what was the cost? And how could she control the power of the seal without succumbing to its dangers? Emily closed the book slowly, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. She now had more questions than answers, but one thing was certain: the mark on her arm was no coincidence. The prophecy had been waiting for her, and she was about to be swept into something far greater than she could have ever imagined. The days that followed were filled with a growing sense of urgency. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on her. The mark on her arm pulsed faintly, its glow growing stronger with each passing day, and she could no longer ignore the strange occurrences that seemed to follow her. Every time she closed her eyes, the figure from her dream, the one cloaked in shadow with glowing eyes, appeared in her mind. His words echoed in her thoughts. "You're the one. The mark you bear is the key." It wasn't long before Emily began to feel like she was being watched. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, flipping through the pages of the ancient manuscript she had found, a sudden knock on the door startled her. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't been expecting anyone. Cautiously, she made her way to the door and peeked through the peephole. Standing outside was a man she had never seen before, tall and dark-haired, with an air of mystery surrounding him. His eyes were intense, piercing, and strangely familiar, but she couldn't place where she had seen him before. His presence was commanding yet oddly comforting. "Emily?" he asked, his voice low and steady, but there was a hint of urgency in it. "I need to speak with you." For a moment, Emily hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about the mark, not even Jenna. Yet, something in the man's voice, the way he seemed to know her name, made her want to open the door. "Who are you?" she asked, still unsure. The man's expression softened. "My name is Gabriel," he said, his eyes flickering toward the mark on her arm. "I've been following your progress. I've been watching you." Emily's stomach tightened at the words. She had always been a private person, and the idea that someone had been observing her made her skin crawl. But then, Gabriel stepped forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not here to harm you," he continued. "I'm here to help you. You don't understand the significance of the mark you bear, but I can show you." Emily stared at him, a mixture of disbelief and suspicion swirling inside her. How did he know about the mark? What did he mean by help? Was this some kind of strange coincidence, or was it something far deeper? I don't know if I can trust you, she said slowly, her voice betraying the wariness she felt. Gabriel gave her a reassuring smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. You don't have a choice. You need to come with me. There's so much more you don't know about what's happening to you. You are not the only one who has awakened the seal. There are others who seek it, and they will stop at nothing to control its power. Emily's mind raced. Her heart was telling her to run, to slam the door shut and ignore whatever strange story this man was trying to sell her. But a deeper part of her, the part connected to the mark, urged her to listen. I'll come with you, she said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Gabriel nodded, his expression serious now. We have much to discuss, and we don't have much time. Emily followed Gabriel into the night, her footsteps echoing on the quiet streets as they made their way to a nondescript car parked a few blocks from her apartment. The air was cool, and the weight of what was happening pressed down on her chest. She had no idea who this man really was or why he seemed so knowledgeable about the mark, but something in his demeanor told her that he wasn't lying. As the car sped through the streets, Gabriel finally spoke, his voice cutting through the silence. You must understand, Emily, he began, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The mark on your arm is not just some symbol. It is part of a long-forgotten prophecy, a prophecy that predates recorded history. The seal of the chosen is said to awaken in certain individuals when the time is right. And when that happens, they must make a choice to either embrace the power it offers or destroy it. Emily's mind was reeling. Power? A choice? This all sounded too fantastical, too surreal to be real. She opened her mouth to speak, but Gabriel cut her off before she could ask more questions. There are many who have searched for the seal over the centuries, he continued, his tone grave. Some of them seek to use it for good, others for far darker purposes. But the seal is dangerous. It's not just a source of power, it's a weapon. And if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. Emily felt a chill run down her spine at his words. A weapon? The thought made her stomach turn. She couldn't imagine using the mark for anything so destructive. But what if someone else did? What if the people Gabriel spoke of were already on their way to take it from her? Why me? She asked, her voice trembling. Why did I get the mark? Why not someone else? Gabriel's gaze softened for a moment. The mark chooses its bearer, he said quietly. You may not fully understand it yet, but the seal chose you because it believes you have the strength to wield it and the wisdom to make the right choice. But there are others who will try to stop you. They know the power of the seal, and they will stop at nothing to get it. Emily was silent for a moment, her mind grappling with the enormity of what Gabriel was saying. She had always been an ordinary person, living a simple life, and now she was being thrust into a world of ancient prophecies, secret powers, and dark forces. It felt impossible to comprehend. Who are these people, she asked. Who's after the seal? Gabriel's expression hardened. They are the Order of the Eclipse, he replied, his voice dark with warning. A secret organization that has been hunting the seal for centuries. They believe it will grant them ultimate power, but at a terrible cost. They will do whatever it takes to claim it, and if they get their hands on it, they will use it to reshape the world as they see fit. Emily's stomach churned. It was no longer just about a strange mark on her arm. It was about something far bigger, something that could change the fate of the entire world. Where are we going? She asked, the weight of it all pressing down on her. Gabriel turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of urgency and resolve. We're going to find the others who bear the seal. You're not alone in this. Together, you will have a chance to stop the order. But you must act quickly. Time is running out. Emily's heart pounded as she sat in the car, her mind racing. Gabriel's words still echoed in her head, louder than the hum of the engine. The Order of the Eclipse. Who were they? What did they want with the seal? The fact that such a group had been hunting the seal for centuries was chilling, and the weight of her new reality was starting to settle heavily on her shoulders. The car finally pulled up to an unassuming building, a place that looked completely ordinary on the outside, as though it were just another office or apartment complex. But when Gabriel led her inside, Emily could feel the difference. The air was thick with tension, and the atmosphere seemed charged with something otherworldly. There was a hum in the walls, an almost palpable energy that seemed to resonate with the mark on her arm. This is it, Gabriel said quietly as they stepped into the elevator. The headquarters of the Guardians. Guardians? Emily repeated, feeling more confused than ever. You mean there's an actual group of people who protect the seal? Gabriel nodded. We are the last line of defense against those who seek to misuse the power of the seal. We've been waiting for the day when the mark would awaken, but we didn't know who would bear it. Now that you're here, we'll train you, prepare you for what's to come. Emily wasn't sure what to feel. A part of her still struggled to accept that she had been chosen to bear such a powerful, dangerous mark. But there was also a strange sense of purpose growing inside her, a recognition that this was no accident. She had been thrust into something far beyond herself, but maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to make a difference. The elevator doors opened to a large, dimly lit room filled with people. They all seemed to be waiting for something, their faces serious, their eyes trained on Gabriel as he stepped forward. These are the other guardians, Gabriel said, gesturing to the group. They are the ones who will help you understand the seal's power and how to harness it. We've been preparing for this moment for years, and now the time has come. Emily's eyes scanned the group. They were an eclectic mix of individuals, all of them exuding a quiet intensity. There was a tall woman with striking red hair, a man with sharp features and a mysterious air about him, and a young woman who looked about Emily's age, her eyes filled with curiosity. We've heard about you, the young woman said, stepping forward. My name is Ava. I know this must be overwhelming. We've been watching for the chosen one, the one who would awaken the seal. But none of us expected it to happen so soon. Emily tried to smile, but the weight of the situation made it hard to find any ease. I'm just trying to understand what's going on, she admitted. I don't know anything about all of this. Why me? Why now? Ava looked at her with sympathy. The seal chooses its bearer for a reason. Some of us are born into this fight, and some of us are chosen because we have the strength to endure it. You'll learn what it means to bear the seal soon enough. Gabriel stepped forward again. The seal is more than just a mark on your skin. It is the key to unlocking powers that are both ancient and vast. But these powers come with consequences. If you're not careful, you could lose yourself. The room fell silent at his words. It was as if everyone knew the price of the seal, and it wasn't a price many were willing to pay. Emily swallowed hard. The responsibility was becoming more real with every passing moment. The order of the eclipse will come for you, Emily, Gabriel said, his voice firm. You have to be ready. The days that followed were a blur of intense training and preparation. Gabriel and the Guardians worked tirelessly to help Emily understand the seal and its power. They taught her how to focus, how to center herself, and most importantly, how to control the growing energy within her. The power was vast, and it often felt like a storm brewing inside of her, one that could consume her if she wasn't careful. The training wasn't just physical. They worked with her mind, teaching her to meditate, to listen to her inner self, and to trust her instincts. Emily learned that the seal had the ability to enhance her senses, to sharpen her strength, and even grant her visions. At first, the visions were chaotic, fragments of images flashing before her eyes. But soon they became clearer, more coherent. One morning, after a particularly grueling training session, Gabriel took Emily aside. His face was grave, and there was a deep intensity in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat. Emily, he began, his voice serious, you're beginning to understand the seal, but there's more to it than just the power it gives you. The mark is tied to something much older, something that goes beyond our world. Emily's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Gabriel took a deep breath before answering. The seal is part of an ancient network of powerful artifacts, all linked together by a force that predates even human civilization. The Order of the Eclipse has been searching for these artifacts for centuries, and they will stop at nothing to collect them all. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The idea that the seal was connected to a larger, more ancient force sent a wave of fear through her. If the Order had been searching for these artifacts for so long, how much time did they really have before it was too late? We can't let them find the other artifacts, Gabriel continued, his voice urgent. If they do, they'll have the power to reshape the world in their image. We can't allow that. The weight of his words settled over Emily, and for the first time, she fully realized the enormity of the task ahead of her. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting everything. The fate of the world rested on her shoulders. Are you ready? Gabriel asked, his gaze never leaving hers. Emily took a deep breath, her hand subconsciously resting over the mark on her arm. She didn't know if she was ready, but she had no choice. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I'm ready." Gabriel nodded. Then the real training begins. The days in the Guardians' headquarters blurred together as Emily's training intensified. She was growing stronger, more attuned to the SEAL's power, but with every passing day, the weight of her responsibilities grew heavier. She spent hours honing her skills, learning to harness the power inside her without losing control. But despite her progress, something deep within her whispered that they weren't safe, that the Order of the Eclipse was closing in. It wasn't until one late evening that Emily's fears were realized. The headquarters was quiet, almost eerily so. Most of the Guardians were asleep, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She had just finished a session of meditation and was preparing to rest when she heard a strange noise, a low thud, followed by the sound of footsteps. Before she could react, the door to her room flew open with a force that sent it crashing into the wall. A masked figure stormed in, wielding a long, gleaming sword. Emily barely had time to react as the figure lunged toward her, but her instincts kicked in. The SEAL pulsed on her arm, its energy flooding her body, and in a split second, she was able to dodge the attack. Her heart pounded in her chest as she backed away from the intruder, her mind racing. The figure was fast, impossibly so, and his movements were precise, like that of a trained assassin. "You must be Emily," the figure hissed, his voice cold and menacing. "The SEAL is mine." The words sent a shiver down Emily's spine. This was no ordinary attack. This was an ambush, and the enemy was already inside the headquarters. Gabriel's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of her training. "Focus. Center yourself. Trust in the SEAL." With a deep breath, Emily called upon the energy within her, and the SEAL flared to life. A wave of power surged through her, and before she could fully comprehend what was happening, she found herself pushing back against the intruder with a burst of raw strength. The force of her strike sent the figure stumbling back, his sword clanging to the ground. The attacker recovered quickly, however, and he charged again, his movements even more aggressive this time. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't take him down with sheer strength. She needed strategy, precision. In that moment, Emily remembered one of Gabriel's teachings. The SEAL amplifies not only your physical power but your mind. Focus on what you cannot see. Let your instincts guide you. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing her mind to clear. In that brief instant, everything seemed to slow down. The figure's movements became predictable, like a pattern she could follow. She darted to the side, dodging his attack, and with a quick, fluid motion, she grabbed the sword from the floor and thrust it toward him. The attacker parried with ease, but Emily could feel her power growing with each passing moment. Suddenly, the figure's mask cracked, revealing a pair of cold, blue eyes. It was then that Emily realized who she was dealing with, a member of the Order of the Eclipse. She had heard about their ruthless warriors, but to see one up close was terrifying. "You will not stop us," the attacker growled, backing away. "The SEAL belongs to us." Before Emily could respond, the figure disappeared into the shadows, vanishing as suddenly as he had appeared. Emily stood frozen, her heart still racing. The attack had been swift, but it had been enough to remind her of the stakes. The Order was here, and they weren't going to stop until they had what they wanted. The aftermath of the attack left the Guardians on high alert. Emily, shaken but unscathed, was rushed into a meeting with Gabriel and the other Guardians. The mood was grim as they gathered in the main briefing room. "That was only the beginning," Gabriel said, his face stern. "The Order of the Eclipse has found us. They know you're here, Emily. They know about the SEAL, and they will come again." Emily felt the weight of his words press down on her like a physical force. The attack had been a wake-up call. The Order was serious, and they were prepared to do whatever it took to get the SEAL. Gabriel was right. They were no longer safe. "We need to find the other SEALs," Gabriel continued, his voice urgent. "The SEAL you bear is one of several. There are others, scattered across the world, and the Order is hunting them down, one by one." Emily's eyes widened. "There are more? More people like me?" Gabriel nodded. "Yes. The SEALs are part of an ancient network, each one linked to a powerful artifact. We've been searching for the others for years, but we've only found a few. The Order is after them all. If they gather the full set, They will possess unimaginable power. Then we need to stop them, Emily said, her voice filled with determination. The attack had lit a fire inside her, the need to protect the seal and prevent the Order from claiming it was no longer just a mission. It had become personal. Gabriel met her gaze. You're right, but finding the other seals won't be easy. We have no idea where they are, and the Order will be watching every move we make. The group fell into a tense silence as they considered their next steps. Ava, the young guardian, spoke up. We can't afford to wait. The longer we stay here, the more likely it is that the Order will track us down. We need to be proactive, start searching for the other seals now, before it's too late. Gabriel nodded in agreement. I'll assemble a team. We'll start with the closest leads. Emily, you'll come with me. The first seal we need to find is in a remote location, deep in the mountains of Tibet. Emily's heart raced at the thought. The adventure was becoming more real with every passing moment. She was no longer just a girl with a mysterious mark on her arm. She was part of something much larger, a mission that could change the fate of the world. Let's go, she said, her voice resolute. We'll find them, Gabriel. We have to. Gabriel gave her a brief, approving nod. Then it's time to begin the search. The journey to Tibet was a whirlwind of preparation. Gabriel and the Guardians gathered the necessary supplies, and Emily, for the first time, truly understood the gravity of what they were about to do. This wasn't just a search for the seal. It was a mission to prevent the Order of the Eclipse from gaining ultimate power. The weight of this responsibility pressed heavily on her chest as they boarded a private jet, bound for the faraway mountains. The flight was long and filled with tension. Emily sat by the window, gazing out at the endless expanse of clouds below. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't quite answer. What would they find when they arrived? What was waiting for them in the remote, frozen mountains of Tibet? And most importantly, how would she, someone so new to all of this, handle the next step in her transformation? Gabriel had been quiet throughout the flight, but every now and then, he would glance at her with a mix of concern and determination. She had noticed that ever since the attack, he seemed more focused, more on edge. But he didn't say much, preferring to let their mission speak for itself. After hours of travel, they finally landed in a small, isolated town at the foot of the mountains. The air was thin and cold, the kind of cold that nipped at the skin and made it hard to breathe. Emily felt the chill settle deep into her bones as they stepped off the plane and onto the icy runway. The locals seemed unfazed by the weather, their faces hidden behind scarves and hats, their movements quick and purposeful. The seal we're searching for is in a cave high up in the mountains, Gabriel said, his voice cutting through the wind. It's believed to be hidden deep inside an ancient temple. We'll need to travel for at least 2 days to get there. 2 days of hiking through unforgiving terrain. Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but there was no turning back now. The urgency of their mission weighed on her mind, and she knew that every moment they spent in this remote location brought them closer to either success or disaster. They set off early the next morning, trekking through narrow mountain paths, their breath visible in the frigid air. The landscape was breathtakingly beautiful, but it was also harsh and unyielding. Emily's muscles ached with every step, and the cold seemed to seep into her very bones, but she pressed on. With each mile, she could feel the seal stirring inside her, a constant reminder of the power and the danger they were up against. As the group climbed higher, the air became thinner, making it harder to breathe. Emily struggled to keep up, her legs heavy with exhaustion. She could feel the weight of the task they were undertaking bearing down on her. But there was something else too, a strange pull in the air. It was as if the mountains themselves were calling to her, guiding her towards something. On the second day of their journey, as the sun began to set, they reached the base of the mountain where the temple was supposed to be. The entrance to the cave was hidden behind a waterfall, its crystal-clear waters cascading down the rocks in a mesmerizing display. Gabriel led the group to the base, and they began to scale the rocky path up to the cave. But as they neared the top, something changed. The atmosphere grew tense, and Emily could feel an unease creeping up her spine. There was something wrong. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air, followed by the sound of rustling rocks. Gabriel's eyes widened as he looked up. "They're here," he muttered, barely audible over the roar of the waterfall. The Order. The sense of impending danger was unmistakable. Gabriel immediately motioned for the group to take cover, his expression hardening into one of focus. Emily's heart raced as she crouched behind a large rock, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The mountainside, once serene and peaceful, now felt like a battleground. "They've tracked us here," Gabriel said, his voice tight. "We need to move fast. Get inside the cave before they reach us." Emily nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline as the seal on her arm began to thrum with energy. She didn't know exactly what was happening, but she could feel it. The seal was alive, awakening to something ancient and powerful. She could hear a faint whisper in her mind, urging her to act, but she wasn't sure what it meant. The group scrambled toward the cave, but the sound of footsteps behind them made it clear that they were being pursued. Gabriel led the charge, his movements swift and precise, while Emily followed closely behind. As they neared the entrance to the cave, she could see figures in the distance, dark silhouettes moving swiftly through the shadows, their intentions clear. The first wave of attackers arrived before they could reach the cave, and Emily was thrown into the thick of it. She barely had time to register what was happening before one of the masked figures lunged at her with a dagger. Instinctively, she raised her arm to defend herself, and in that moment, the seal flared to life, a brilliant light erupting from her skin. The attacker was thrown backward, his body slamming into the rocks. Emily barely had time to process what had just happened before another figure appeared, this one with a large staff. He swung it toward her, but she was quicker. The seal empowered her reflexes, and she dodged the strike with ease. Without thinking, she countered, sending a blast of energy surging through her palms and striking him in the chest. He fell to the ground with a grunt, unconscious. She was learning to harness the seal's power, but it wasn't enough. The attackers kept coming, their numbers growing as the darkness of the mountain seemed to close in around them. Gabriel and the other guardians fought valiantly, but the enemy was relentless. Inside now, Gabriel yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. Emily glanced back, her eyes meeting his for a moment. She didn't hesitate. They had to get to the cave. With a final push, they rushed inside, ducking into the darkness of the cave. Gabriel slammed the heavy stone door shut behind them, blocking out the sound of the battle. Inside, the cave was even darker than the mountain path outside, but Emily could feel the energy pulsing around her. The seal was reacting, as if it knew they were close. She glanced around, her heart pounding in her chest. "This is it," Gabriel said, his voice low. "The seal we've been searching for is somewhere in this temple. We just have to find it before the order does." But Emily knew one thing for sure. The battle was far from over. The order had found them, and the real fight was about to begin. The cave was cold and still, the only sound their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As the heavy stone door sealed behind them, the noise of the battle outside was muffled, but Emily knew that time was running out. The order would not give up easily. Their relentless pursuit was proof of that. Gabriel led the group deeper into the cave, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings with calculated precision. "Stay alert," Gabriel warned, his voice low. "The seal we're after is inside this temple, but this place is ancient. There's more here than just the seal itself." Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something profound about this place, something that went beyond the physical realm. As they ventured deeper into the cave, the air grew thicker, and the temperature seemed to drop even further. It wasn't just the cold that made her shiver. It was the energy that pulsed through the air, something ancient and powerful. They passed through narrow corridors and stone chambers filled with intricate carvings on the walls, depicting strange symbols and creatures that seemed almost otherworldly. The walls seemed to hum with energy, and Emily could feel the seal reacting, its power surging in response to the environment. Every step they took brought her closer to something she couldn't quite understand, but her instincts told her it was something crucial to their mission. After what felt like hours of walking, they arrived at the heart of the temple. A massive, circular chamber opened up before them, its walls adorned with golden symbols and faded frescoes. At the center of the room was a large pedestal, and on top of it, a glowing orb sat, radiating a soft, golden light. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The seal they had been searching for was right in front of her. But as her gaze lingered on the orb, she felt a deep unease. "This is it," Gabriel said, his voice filled with awe. "The seal. But before anyone could move closer, a low rumble echoed through the temple, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The chamber seemed to shift, the ancient stone groaning as if it were alive. Emily's heart raced as she looked around, realizing that the order wasn't far behind. "They're here," Gabriel muttered, eyes narrowing. Just as he spoke, the walls of the chamber began to glow with an eerie, crimson light. Emily's stomach twisted as she felt an unnatural presence closing in on them. Suddenly, from the shadows, figures appeared, members of the Order of the Eclipse. Their faces were masked, but their cold, calculating eyes burned with intensity. Emily's pulse quickened. The confrontation had arrived. "I see you've found the seal," the leader of the group said, his voice dripping with malice. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Emily. "But it won't be yours for much longer." The Order was here to take the seal, and they weren't going to stop until they had it. The tension in the chamber was palpable. The air was thick with anticipation, and Emily could feel the seal within her flaring in response to the imminent danger. She wasn't sure what to expect, but one thing was certain. The time for running was over. The Order had found them, and this battle would decide everything. Gabriel stepped forward, his stance defensive. "You won't have it," he said, his voice steady. "We won't let you take the seal." The leader of the Order, a tall, imposing figure with a sharp, angular face, gave a cruel smile. "You think you can stop us? We've been waiting for this moment for centuries. The seal is ours." Emily stood next to Gabriel, her heart hammering in her chest. She had never faced anything like this before, and yet, as the seal pulsed with power within her, she felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. She knew what she had to do. She had to protect it, not just for herself, but for the world. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake again, and from the shadows emerged even more figures. Warriors from the Order, each one armed with dark, cursed weapons. Emily's eyes widened as she realized the full scale of the threat they were facing. But as the dark figures advanced, something deep within her stirred, and she felt the seal responding in a way she couldn't quite explain. Without warning, she reached out with her hand, instinctively tapping into the power of the seal. A blinding light erupted from her palm, and the ground around her cracked as the energy surged outward. The members of the Order were thrown back, their weapons clattering to the floor as they struggled to maintain their balance. The leader of the Order scowled, fury flashing in his eyes. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, girl." But Emily didn't hesitate. She had a mission, and she wouldn't let them stand in her way. As the light from the seal grew brighter, she focused her energy, calling on the full power within her. The seal responded, its ancient magic amplifying her strength. The members of the Order regained their footing and began to close in again, but Emily was faster now, more confident. She released another burst of energy, this one stronger than before. The light expanded, enveloping the entire chamber. The attackers shrieked in pain as they were blasted backward, their forms disintegrating into shadows. "Stop her!" the leader of the Order roared, his voice filled with desperation. But it was too late. Emily's power was overwhelming, the seal's magic too strong for the Order to contend with. She could feel it. Her connection to the seal was complete. The energy surged through her, and with one final, concentrated burst, the leader of the Order was knocked back, crashing into the wall with a loud, bone-shaking thud. As the dust settled, Emily stood alone in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily. Her body was shaking, but she knew that the battle was over. The Order had been defeated. Gabriel walked over to her, a look of quiet admiration in his eyes. "You did it," he said, his voice soft but full of pride. "The seal is safe." Emily looked down at her arm, where the seal still pulsed softly, its power now more familiar than ever. She had done it. Against all odds, she had protected the seal and stopped the Order of the Eclipse from taking it. But the battle had taken its toll. Emily was exhausted, her body drained from the immense effort. She stumbled slightly, but Gabriel caught her, steadying her with a reassuring hand. "We need to get you out of here," he said. "But for now, the seal is safe." As they made their way out of the temple, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. They had won this battle, but she knew the war was far from over. The Order of the Eclipse would not stop, and there were still many more seals to find. But for now, at least, the world was safe. And that was enough. As Emily and Gabriel emerged from the temple, The air outside was frigid, but it felt like a breath of fresh air compared to the oppressive energy they had just left behind. The battle with the Order had taken its toll on everyone, but despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of accomplishment. The seal was safe for now, and the immediate danger had passed. But as Emily caught her breath, her mind began to race. She had felt the power of the seal surge through her when she unleashed it against the Order, and it had been unlike anything she had ever experienced. The connection between them was growing stronger by the day, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the seal had changed her in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Gabriel was walking beside her, his face set in determination, but there was a quiet concern in his eyes. He could sense her inner turmoil, and though he wasn't the type to openly express his feelings, Emily could tell that he was worried. "We need to get back to the safe house," Gabriel said, breaking the silence. "The others will be waiting." Emily nodded, though her thoughts were far from the safe house. She was still processing everything that had happened. The attack on the temple, the overwhelming surge of power she had felt, and the truth about the seals. It was clear that they weren't just ancient relics. They were connected to something far more significant than she could understand. Something that could change the course of history. As they made their way back to their transport, Emily's mind kept drifting to one question. Why had the seal chosen her? Why had she, of all people, been given this responsibility? And more importantly, what would happen if she couldn't control its power? The journey back was long and quiet. Emily couldn't bring herself to speak, her thoughts too tangled. Gabriel kept glancing at her, but he didn't push her to talk. He understood, perhaps more than anyone, the weight she was carrying. They had all been affected by the seals, but Emily had borne the brunt of it. She had to learn how to wield its power, and quickly. Every moment that passed was a moment closer to the Order discovering the next seal. And the next seal was the key to their ultimate plan. When they finally arrived at the safe house, the other Guardians were already waiting. They were tired, their faces drawn from the battle, but there was a sense of relief among them. For now, they had won. But Gabriel's expression was still grim. "We've secured the seal for now," Gabriel said, addressing the group. "But this isn't over. We need to prepare for what's coming next." Emily could see the seriousness in his eyes. The Order had been relentless, but they had underestimated her, and that was something she had to remember. She had won today, but tomorrow would be a different battle. The other Guardians nodded in agreement, their faces hardening with resolve. Gabriel turned to Emily. "We're going to need your strength. The seal is linked to you now, and you have a responsibility to protect it." Emily nodded silently, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. She had never asked for this, but it was clear that there was no turning back now. The seal was part of her, and she was part of it. Whether she was ready or not, her journey had only just begun. As the night wore on, the Guardians discussed their next steps. They needed to gather information, track down the remaining seals, and keep them out of the hands of the Order. But more than that, they needed to figure out what the seals truly were and what their power meant. Every clue, every piece of the puzzle, was crucial. The fate of the world could depend on it. Emily sat quietly in the corner, her thoughts spinning. She could feel the seal's power still thrumming beneath her skin, like a pulse that wouldn't be ignored. It was both comforting and unsettling at the same time. She had no idea what would happen if she continued to wield this power, but one thing was clear. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would be dangerous. But as she looked around at the faces of the Guardians, she knew one thing for sure. They would face it together. The path would be difficult, and they would have to sacrifice much, but Emily wasn't alone in this fight. And that gave her a glimmer of hope. The days that followed were filled with research, strategy meetings, and constant vigilance. Emily had barely recovered from the exhaustion of the battle at the temple, but there was no time to rest. Gabriel had insisted on keeping her close, training her to use the seal's power more effectively. But despite all of the training, Emily couldn't shake the sense that there was something deeper at play, something she couldn't yet understand. Late one night, as she was going over some ancient texts in the safe house library, Gabriel approached her. His face was serious, and there was an air of urgency about him. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. "There's something I've been keeping from you." Emily looked up, surprised. She had thought that she knew everything, at least, everything Gabriel was willing to share. But there was something in his tone now that made her heart race with apprehension. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rising unease in her chest. Gabriel sat down beside her, his expression thoughtful. I've been tracking the seals for a long time. Before you came into the picture, I spent years gathering information on them. I thought I understood their purpose, but now I'm not so sure. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. What do you mean? The seals are connected to a prophecy, Gabriel said, his voice barely above a whisper. A prophecy that speaks of a time when the seals will be united and their power will either save or destroy the world. Emily's mind raced. A prophecy? Why didn't you tell me this before? Gabriel met her gaze, his eyes filled with regret. I didn't want to burden you with it. But now that you've bonded with the seal, I can't keep this from you anymore. You are the key, Emily. The prophecy speaks of a chosen one who will wield the power of the seals. But it also says that the one who holds the seals must make a great sacrifice, one that could cost them everything. Emily's chest tightened. What kind of sacrifice? Gabriel's expression grew somber. It doesn't say exactly, but from everything I've learned, it's clear that the power of the seals comes with a heavy price, and I fear that you may be the one who has to pay it. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily felt a chill wash over her. She had thought she was just protecting the seal, just stopping the order of the eclipse. But now, it seemed like there was far more at stake, more than she could have ever imagined. Gabriel placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but comforting. Whatever happens, you won't be alone. We'll figure this out together. Emily nodded, though the weight of the prophecy hung heavily in her mind. The future was uncertain, and the stakes were higher than ever. But one thing was clear. She had a destiny to fulfill, and the road ahead would be fraught with dangers she could never have anticipated. Days turned into weeks as Emily, Gabriel, and the other guardians made preparations for their next move. They had gathered information on the remaining seals, piecing together fragments of ancient texts and prophecies. Time was slipping through their fingers, and the order of the eclipse was still out there, hunting them down. But the guardians knew that the seals could not remain separated for long. The prophecy was clear. If they weren't united soon, the balance would be lost forever. The last seal was located in a remote, mountainous region, hidden deep within the jungles of South America. Emily had been briefed on the journey, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited. Every step they took toward the final seal brought more uncertainty. The power of the seals was growing stronger, and Emily could feel it deep inside her, its pull undeniable. The closer they got to the final seal, the more intense the visions became. Strange dreams plagued her sleep, each one showing cryptic images of destruction and rebirth, a swirling vortex of light and darkness that called to her from beyond time. She would wake up in a cold sweat, unsure of what it meant, but Gabriel assured her that this was normal. Her connection to the seals was deepening. However, with every passing day, Emily's fears grew. The prophecy lingered in her thoughts, its words echoing in her mind. The sacrifice she had to make, whatever it was, loomed like a shadow over her heart. She could sense that the final seal held the key to everything. If they could unlock its power, they could end the war against the Order once and for all. But there was also the terrifying possibility that it would be too much for her to bear. We'll get through this together, Gabriel said, as if reading her thoughts. He had been an unwavering pillar of support throughout their journey, but even he seemed apprehensive about the upcoming trial. Together, Emily echoed, though she wasn't sure how much longer that would be true. She could already feel the weight of the seal's power beginning to consume her. She wasn't sure how long she could keep fighting against it. Finally, after a grueling journey, they arrived at the hidden temple where the last seal was said to be located. The jungle was thick with overgrown vines and damp earth, but there, amidst the foliage, stood an ancient structure, half swallowed by time and nature. It was a temple unlike any they had seen before, its stone walls adorned with intricate carvings and inscriptions that seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. "We've made it," Gabriel said softly, but his voice held no triumph. Instead, there was a quiet sadness in his eyes, a realization that the end was near. As they approached the temple's entrance, the temperature seemed to drop. Emily's pulse quickened. The power of the seal was near. She could feel it resonating within her. She stepped forward, the weight of her destiny pressing down on her with each movement. Her hand instinctively reached for the ancient stone door, and with a deep breath, she pushed it open. The temple interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of incense and ancient dust. In the center of the chamber was an altar, and atop it, a radiant stone, smooth, glowing with a faint, golden light. This was it, the final seal. Emily felt the energy radiating from it, pulling her in, but she hesitated. "This is it, isn't it?" Emily said quietly, her voice trembling with the weight of what lay before her. Gabriel nodded, his face filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "This is where it all comes together. But be careful. The power here, it's different from anything we've faced before." As Emily took a step forward, the seal's light seemed to intensify, casting shadows along the walls. She could feel the weight of its energy, like a living thing. The prophecy echoed in her mind once more. The chosen one must sacrifice everything to wield the power of the seals. She wasn't ready, but there was no turning back now. As Emily stepped closer to the altar, she felt the seal calling to her, its light enveloping her in warmth. It was as though the entire world faded away, and for a moment, there was only her and the seal. She could feel the power coursing through her veins, and it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The visions came faster now, flashes of the future, the past, and the destruction that would come if she failed. But it wasn't just the seal's power that was overwhelming. It was the realization of what the prophecy truly meant. The sacrifice. She had been running from it, avoiding the truth, but now it was here in front of her. The price for wielding the power of the seals was not just her life, it was her very soul. The air grew heavy with tension as Gabriel stepped forward, his face etched with worry. "Emily, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. We'll figure it out." But Emily shook her head. She could see the truth in his eyes, the uncertainty, the fear. She had no more time for doubt. The prophecy was clear, and it was hers to fulfill. "No, Gabriel," Emily said softly, her voice filled with resolve. "This is my destiny. The world will be saved, but I have to be the one to make this choice." Gabriel stepped back, his face filled with anguish. He knew she was right, but the thought of losing her was unbearable. He had grown to care for her in ways he never thought possible. But he also understood that Emily was not just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the world. The seals had chosen her for this moment, and it was a moment she had to face alone. With a final, deep breath, Emily reached out and touched the seal. As her fingers made contact with the glowing stone, a surge of energy coursed through her body. The power was overwhelming, and for a moment, it felt as though she might be torn apart by it. But then, just as the energy reached its peak, Emily felt something shift within her. A deep sense of peace washed over her, as though she had finally found her place in the world. She realized that the sacrifice wasn't about losing her life. It was about letting go of everything that held her back. She had to surrender to the power, to the truth of who she was. The light from the seal enveloped her, and Emily felt herself being lifted from the ground. The world around her began to blur, and for a moment, she saw flashes of every life she had ever lived, every choice, every moment, leading her to this one. And then, the light reached its crescendo. With a final, gentle pulse, Emily's body was bathed in the seal's energy, and she felt herself being transformed. Her very essence seemed to merge with the seal, her spirit becoming one with its power. Gabriel watched in awe as Emily glowed with an ethereal light, her form shifting as the seal's magic intertwined with her being. He could feel the power in the air. He could feel the world changing. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded. Emily stood before him, her eyes wide and filled with a new understanding. She was different, transformed, but she was still Emily. "I did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Gabriel stepped forward, his heart swelling with a mix of pride and sorrow. "You did. You saved us all." As Emily looked around, she could feel the changes in the world. The power of the seals had been unlocked, and the order of the eclipse was no more. The balance had been restored, but the prophecy had been fulfilled. The sacrifice had been made. Emily had saved the world. But at what cost? With the final seal's power unlocked, the world seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The order of the eclipse had been defeated, and their dark influence over the seals was broken. The balance was restored, and the seals, now united, radiated a sense of peace and harmony that had been lost for centuries. However, Emily knew that the cost of this victory would linger. She had given up part of herself to fulfill the prophecy, and while the world had been saved, she was not the same person she once was. The transformation had left a mark on her soul, but she had come to terms with it. The seals had chosen her for this task, and she had completed it. As Emily, Gabriel, and the other guardians stood together, looking out over the peaceful landscape, they knew their mission was complete. But there was one final task to undertake. "We've done it," Emily said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "But now we rebuild." The world was at peace, and the future was bright. The guardians had fulfilled their purpose, and Emily had fulfilled hers. It was a new beginning, for her, for the world, and for all of humanity. As they walked into the sunset, ready for whatever the future would bring, Emily smiled. Though the journey had been long and filled with trials, it had led her to this moment. The moment where the world was safe, and the seals were no longer a threat. It was the beginning of a new era, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt a sense of peace. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the world that Emily had saved, she felt a sense of peace settle within her soul. The long and arduous journey, filled with challenges, sacrifices, and moments of doubt, had led to this. The world had been restored, the balance had been regained, and the seals were no longer a threat. The prophecy was fulfilled, but Emily's path, like the world she had saved, was just beginning anew. Her heart, though forever changed, was filled with hope for the future. The seal's power had been unlocked, and the world had been granted a chance at rebirth. Together with Gabriel and the other guardians, Emily had become part of something greater than herself, a force that would continue to guide and protect the world for generations to come. As they walked into the future, hand in hand, Emily knew that though their mission had ended, a new chapter was only just beginning. The journey was far from over, and together, they would face whatever came next with strength, courage, and unwavering determination. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world, and by subscribing, you'll never miss a moment of the exciting adventures that lie ahead. Stay tuned for more tales of courage, destiny, and the timeless battle between light and dark. Until next time, remember, no matter how difficult the journey, with hope and unity, every challenge can be overcome.